Coming to this uninhabited wilderness, with limited plane weight capacity, Marty had brought only 2 large traps, specifically for large predators. Since wolverines are solitary, Marty likely faced just one opponent. Catching it would solve everything. He'd use these heavy-duty traps to build a specialized cubby set, placing bait inside a tree cavity, framed with branches, with a trap set at the entrance. Any wolverine reaching for the bait would be caught. This setup wasn't foolproof. A powerful wolverine might sometimes break free, but it was Marty's best available plan. With traps set, all he could do now was wait. If the wolverine took the bait, Marty would succeed. On the tundra of western Alaska, winter's cold has frozen the entire land. Fur trapper Marty stands alone in this icy wilderness. Within a 60-kilometer radius, he is the only human, but not the only hunter. Just as his efforts began yielding sables, a wolverine abruptly joined the hunt, greedily plundering Marty's entire trap line. It stole his catches, devoured his bait, and wrecked his traps. Furious, Marty placed his only 2 large traps in this forest. He must catch this wolverine, or risk complete failure here. Today, Marty would check yesterday's traps. Though small, wolverines possess immense strength. Alaska's scarce resources drive them to greedily consume everything nearby, until the area is depleted. If the trap failed today, Marty faced a new choice. Wolverine tracks appeared near the trap, an encouraging sign. He quickly set down his pack to inspect. But sometimes, reality is harsh. The wolverine hadn't entered the cubby. The tree cavity stood empty. Marty had failed. Now he must react immediately. No more time wasted here. He'd leave this trap active, while making a tactical retreat, temporarily abandoning this zone, to trap sables elsewhere. Persisting against the wolverine wouldn't even cover his plane's fuel costs. Naturally, he also hoped that during this strategic withdrawal, the wolverine might yet be caught. In the desolate western Alaska, the new trapping location lay upstream along this river, through a mountain pass, into another valley. This was the valley Marty spotted. When his plane circled overhead during his arrival, it contained dense spruce forests, so likely held abundant sable. Plan finalized, Marty needed to depart immediately, to scout the adjacent valley over 10 kilometers away. This trip would require camping out for several days, so before leaving, Marty packed his gear. Hiking such rugged mountain terrain, he could carry at most 20 to 30 kilograms. Some traps and bait were essential, plus food and his sleeping bag. These necessities, along with a rifle, comprised Marty's entire load. While daylight remained, Marty hurriedly set off. The canyon he pointed to was today's destination. Deceptively close, it was actually distant. He followed the river, seeking the shortest route into the valley. But the river itself became an obstacle. Flowing water had thinned the ice, with large sections of open water. Crossing was impossible. Marty needed to find an ice bridge, or climb the mountain to bypass the river. Falling in would soak his pack and himself, a disastrous outcome. He finally found a fully frozen section, but the ice was dangerously thin, cracking underfoot. Needless to say, this risk was unacceptable. Only one path remained: climb over the mountain to reach his destination. Such mountains were difficult even normally, let alone with deep snow. Snow, loose rocks, deadfall. Any mishap could spell doom for Marty. Truthfully, Marty wasn't fearless. He was burdened, but determined to press on. Often, his motivation wasn't for himself, but for his wife, child, and their warm home. On the Alaskan tundra, mountain vistas abounded. But to fur trapper Marty, this was merely open hunting ground. To escape the greedy wolverine, he trekked mountains and rivers. To trap sable here, reaching the mountaintop at dusk, before the bitterly cold night set in, he needed to find a safe spot for a temporary camp. Without a tent, he could only build a fire and rest under the open sky. He cut spruce boughs to lay on the snow as bedding. These spruce boughs effectively insulated his body from the snow, reducing heat loss to the ground. After laying out the bed, Marty tried lying on it and found it quite comfortable. That night, he lit a campfire and cooked barbecued meat, BBQ. The meat seemed savory, but he only hoped to catch sables tomorrow. After eating, he unrolled his sleeping bag and slept beneath the clear, starry sky. That night, temperatures plummeted to minus 30 degrees Celsius. After a long night, Marty awoke in the morning sun. The bone-chilling cold left him stiff and sore, but he was long accustomed to this. Without delay, he immediately embarked on his trapping journey. Near his temporary camp, he soon discovered sable tracks. Though a positive sign, he dared not be blindly optimistic. Since tracks existed, he set his first trap here. Starting from scratch, fell a tree, hung bait, set the trap. After setting this trap, Marty ventured deeper into the forest to find more sable tracks and set additional traps, while hoping not to encounter that Wolverine again. This forest seemed richer in sable. Before long, all the traps Marty brought were placed in the nearby woods. The day passed quickly. Now he returned to camp to await tomorrow's harvest. Another long night passed. Marty woke in the frigid dawn, quickly ate breakfast, and set out to check traps. Normally, he'd check traps days after setting them, but here was different. His supplies lasted only 24 hours, so he drastically shortened inspection intervals. You might wonder what he eats in the wild. Besides meat, there's this oatmeal-like food. After breakfast, Marty checked yesterday's traps. The first was nearby. Soon he arrived. A sable already caught in the trap, just as he dreamed last night. This area might truly hold more prey than the tent site. Marty was thrilled. His earnings rose by $200, but it didn't end there. At the second trap, he caught another sable. Earnings climbed to $400. If not for dwindling supplies, Marty would have stayed indefinitely. Continuing like this until season's end could have brought substantial profits. This tactical retreat proved highly rewarding. Regardless, he must return to the tent tomorrow. Beyond supply issues, he hadn't forgotten the Wolverine. He wondered if the trap he'd left there might have caught it during his absence. 400 miles south of the Arctic Circle lies the Alaskan tundra. In winter, daylight lasts under 5 hours. After his tactical relocation, fur trapper Marty caught 2 sables at this temporary camp. That evening he lit a campfire and began skinning the day's sables. Nighttime temperatures dropped to minus 33 degrees Celsius, colder than last night. But the work had to be completed. Since supplies were exhausted, he'd return to the tent tomorrow. But why not eat sable meat? It's said to taste quite good, yet he absolutely refused. The skinning process involved graphic content, so we'll skip that detail. Let's discuss tomorrow's plan. He'd hike 16 kilometers back to his camp. Retracing the mountain path and river route would consume excessive time and pose significant risks, so he decided to continue searching for an ice bridge along the river. That night, he rested little. 3 hours before dawn, he set out fully geared. Moving upstream, he knew the river would split into smaller channels, drastically slowing the current and thickening the ice. The best solution Marty could devise. He trekked upstream in darkness, hoping daylight would reveal a safe crossing. After hours of hiking, dawn broke. 8 kilometers remained to camp. Crossing this icy, rapid stream would get him there before dark. To achieve this, he'd already detoured nearly 2 extra kilometers. Though the river narrowed and branched here, crossing remained perilous. Falling into water at these temperatures meant rapidly freezing to death. He tested each tributary carefully, minimizing risks step by step. With every footfall, the ice crackled beneath him. He safely crossed smaller branches, leaving only the widest channel, about 4.5 meters across. Though an ice bridge existed, Marty hesitated to cross. With sunset approaching, he had to decide immediately. After navigating the most challenging ice crossing, only 2 hours of sunlight remained. 8 kilometers still stretched before him. Reaching camp before dark was impossible. He'd walk under the vast starry sky. That night, biting cold penetrated his bones. Having walked all day, he dared not stop, knowing sweat would freeze him to death if he paused. As Marty neared exhaustion, he finally reached camp. Inside the tent, he urgently ignited the stove. Long absent warmth slowly spread through his body. In that moment, Marty felt he was the happiest person on earth. Sometimes, profound contentment is that simple. Tonight, Marty could finally rest in a warm tent. Surviving such extreme wilderness demands extraordinary courage and perseverance. In the frigid Alaskan wilderness, snow-capped mountains pierce the clouds, majestic, spectacular, and awe-inspiring. Fur trapper Marty awoke on this icy morning. Returning to camp, his first task was settling the score with the Wolverine. Just as Marty began harvesting here, this Wolverine had plundered his newly set trap line, nearly leaving him empty-handed. This time, Marty was determined to make it pay. Before leaving the area earlier, Marty had set 2 large traps. If he still couldn't catch the Wolverine, he'd have to return to the other temporary camp, consuming precious time. With only 5 weeks left in the trapping season, he had to maximize his efforts to salvage what remained. Marty shouldered his gear and headed toward the 2 large traps. Success hinged on this attempt, but reality delivered a harsh blow. The first trap stood empty. The cunning Wolverine hadn't even visited. Marty felt disheartened. Not far ahead lay the second trap. Everything depended on this. Another failure might break Marty's resolve. What did you think? Would he catch the Wolverine? Correct, Marty failed again. Both traps were utterly empty. Not even a single hair caught. Given this, the area was untenable. He hurried back to camp to pack, eager to set traps at the other site. His duel with the Wolverine ended with the Wolverine victorious. Marty collected his traps, preparing to return to camp. Now he walked dejectedly. Decades of trapping experience. Defeated by a single Wolverine? If word got out, he'd become a laughingstock. For Marty's reputation, please don't tell anyone about this. When hope seems lost, fortunes often turn. While returning to camp, Marty spotted fresh Wolverine tracks on the trail. Unbelievably, right beside his tent. It seemed the Wolverine was targeting Marty's camp. The audacity was infuriating. In decades of trapping, this was Marty's first encounter with such a brazen Wolverine. Not catching it would be an insult. Today, Marty would unleash his ultimate move, showing the beast who ruled these woods. Since it had just visited, it must still be nearby. Setting a trap now offered a final chance. This was Marty's last opportunity. Following the tracks, he searched for the optimal trap location. Finding the spot, he began setting the trap. The same cubby set design, but with unprecedented bait. He used all his remaining bait here. This time, he was truly burning his boats. Would he succeed? After setting the trap, Marty returned to camp to rest. That night, he dreamt of battling the Wolverine. 24 hours after setting the trap, Marty returned to check it. Another failure would devastate his season, forcing him to abandon the area and relocate elsewhere. He desperately wanted to avoid that. Everything depended on this trap. Approaching the site, Marty nearly leapt for joy. A massive Wolverine was caught. Marty had finally triumphed. This Wolverine had crossed the wrong man and paid the ultimate price. Fur trapper Marty had achieved a pivotal victory. In the frozen Alaskan wild, the Wolverine that challenged him faced the consequences. Hunting rights over this forest were restored to Marty. The day after catching the Wolverine, he ventured deep into the woods to reset the traps the Wolverine had destroyed. Amid this chaos, some prey eaten by the Wolverine, some caught earlier by Marty. It was unclear how many sables remained. The neighboring valley held more prey, but the route was treacherous and fraught with unknowns. All factors considered, this area still offered the best value. With the Wolverine gone, perhaps Marty's luck would surge here. The harsh environment made human survival arduous, yet precisely this became a natural barrier for wildlife, allowing them to thrive. Time in the trapping season was dwindling. He accelerated repairs on the Wolverine damaged traps, refastening steel traps, replacing bait. Just repairing these traps consumed Marty's entire day. He hoped his efforts would be rewarded, enabling him to earn more, so he could provide a better life for his wife and child. That evening, Marty returned to camp to rest. When dawn broke, yesterday's reset traps had been set for 24 hours. Now was the critical moment for harvest. Marty rose early, prepared his gear, and went to inspect yesterday's traps. If luck was on his side, Marty could stage a dramatic comeback. If not, his trapping season might be utterly ruined. But today began poorly. The first trap was empty. Marty sighed deeply and moved to the second location. His disappointment was evident, mixed with deep uncertainty. Arriving at the second empty trap, he began to panic. But it didn't end there. The third empty trap made him wonder, had the nearby sables been wiped out by that Wolverine? Just as he thought all was lost, fortune turned. At the fourth trap, Marty finally caught his first sable since defeating the Wolverine. His anxious heart finally settled. Moreover, his luck didn't stop there. At the next trap, Marty caught his second sable of the day. After catching the Wolverine, it seemed the sables had all returned. This boosted Marty's confidence immensely. He felt that if this continued, he could still turn a profit this trapping season. Sometimes, when luck arrives, nothing can stop it. In the following hours, Marty harvested a third, then a fourth, and finally a fifth sable. In a single day, he earned $1,000. Who could have guessed? After catching the Wolverine, Marty soared straight to the peak of success. He'd probably be laughing in his sleep tonight. From then on, he began having a stable source of prey here. In the blink of an eye, he had been here for 8 weeks. The trapping season wasn't over yet, but the harsh environment, relying solely on a small stove for warmth, had taken a toll on Marty's body. Surviving this long and extreme cold, without effective insulation, sleeping on the ground in a sleeping bag every night, would inevitably cause health problems over time. The money earned might not even cover medical bills. Having endured this long, he began preparing to return to his warm home. Despite initial setbacks upon arriving here, he ultimately secured enough pelts in this forest to successfully salvage the trapping season. Though he didn't earn much, at least he didn't lose money. Starting today, Marty would retrieve all previously set traps before returning to camp to pack. Because sable prices were at a historic high this year, Marty's final earnings were around $6,000, plus 1 Wolverine pelt. It didn't seem like much, but he was content. At the very least, this journey revealed an exceptionally fertile hunting ground. Returning here next trapping season, he could hit the ground running. To reduce the plane's weight, Marty needed to skin the sables before departure, aiming for minimal weight. Otherwise, an overloaded plane might fail to take off, or even if it did, fuel consumption would drastically increase. The reserve fuel he brought might then be insufficient for the flight home. Overall, Marty was quite pleased with this journey. He didn't fear hardship or difficulty. He loved this life, cherished solitude, relished hunting, and valued providing for his family this way. Truthfully, in reality, how many of us work at jobs we truly love? Most people exhaust themselves for their families, toiling at work they dislike. Seeing this, let's applaud our own unyielding spirit. Tonight was Marty's last night in Alaska. Tomorrow he would return home to reunite with his wife and daughter. Right now, he couldn't wait. After 8 weeks of trapping in frigid Alaska, fur trapper Marty was finally going home. After resting here one final night, today he began packing his gear for the 3-hour flight home. Daylight now lasted about 6 hours. He needed to manage time wisely. To arrive before dark, his plan was 3 hours to pack, then 3 hours to fly. His plane was rudimentary, lacking radar or navigation systems. Flying relied solely on his eyes, making night flights impossible. Before packing, he needed to preheat the plane's engine. A 2-hour process, perfect timing to pack his gear. Miscellaneous items, stored firewood, the small stove. The final major item was the tent. Due to prolonged heating, snow at the tent's edges had melted and refrozen, fusing the tent to the ice. Excessive force would tear the expensive tent. According to Marty, this tent was valuable. To avoid damage, he painstakingly chipped away the ice. Bit by bit, through his efforts, the tent was finally freed intact. But when he hauled the packed gear to the plane, he discovered the engine compartment was still ice cold. The heater had malfunctioned. Likely it automatically shut off after being placed in the compartment, failing to warm the engine. With only 3 hours of daylight left, and the engine unable to start, this meant he'd spend another night in Alaska. Now, with the tent dismantled, he lacked even a heated shelter. Tonight would be grueling again. He planned to sleep in the plane's cargo hold. He'd rise before dawn to reheat the engine, but the cramped space and icy floor offered little warmth, so Marty decided to build a campfire instead. An hour before dawn, he rose to preheat the plane's engine, using the heater. This time, he carefully checked it multiple times before closing the engine compartment with confidence. At daybreak, Marty awoke to find the engine compartment at normal temperature. This time, he could finally go home. After loading the luggage and the Wolverine pelt, Marty needed to inspect the runway. Recent strong winds had swept away the snow in this area, leaving only hard rock, covered by a thin layer of ice. Taking off on skis on such terrain posed significant risks. The plane could easily be damaged, stranding Marty here. Yet, given the circumstances, with the plane as his only means of exit, he had to proceed regardless. Returning to the plane, he attempted to start the engine. After several tries, the engine finally roared to life. With no snow cover, the taxiing was extremely bumpy. He feared the plane might shake apart. Finally, Marty took off successfully. Barring unforeseen events, in 3 hours, Marty would see his family. At this moment, his heart ached for home. To return, Marty had to retrace his route. But the memory of the treacherous windy canyon still haunted him. Yet this canyon remained the only passage. On the outbound journey, he'd flown into headwinds. Now, returning, the wind direction had reversed. Yet it was still a headwind. His small plane bucked violently in the gale, nearly slamming into the canyon walls. Continuing like this would inevitably cause major problems. After a moment's hesitation, Marty decided to divert toward another pass 25 miles away. Though this detour avoided the fierce winds, it carried its own risk. The plane's fuel might be insufficient for home. Shortly after diverting, Marty encountered a temperature inversion layer, an atmospheric anomaly. Simply put, a pocket of warmer air existed aloft. Flying through an inversion layer was dangerous. Upon entering it, the plane accumulated significant moisture. When exiting the layer, temperatures plummeted instantly, freezing that moisture, which could potentially stall the engine. Marty decided to gamble. He descended to a lower altitude to avoid the inversion layers. This demanded intense focus. Flying low meant mountains and trees loomed dangerously close. A single lapse could mean disaster. After a harrowing period, the headwinds weakened considerably. In his current direction, he had finally cleared the most perilous part of the route. Sometimes, no matter what you face, you must confront it bravely, keeping a clear head. If fear overcomes you, you may make poor judgments, leading to irreversible consequences. 3 hours later, the plane's fuel gauge neared empty. But by then, Marty was flying over his home. Though the journey was fraught with peril and excitement, in the end, he returned safely. His wife and daughter waited at home. After landing, the family embraced tightly. This long-awaited reunion brought tears to their eyes.